Bonjour and welcome back to my French Revolution vlogcast. This is episode 9 where we're going to talk about the reasons for and causes of the terror. And although the terror really starts in 1793, I just want to start by considering the events of the autumn of 1792. The context for this is that the French Republic had declared war on the Austrians and the Prussians, and the war had started extremely badly. They'd been pretty confident about how it would go, but they thought that they were the freest nation in the world, and therefore their troops would fight the best against Prussians and Austrians who were still oppressed by their rulers. But a series of defeats lead to great anxiety, particularly in Paris and across France, about the security of the French nation. Now, this all comes to a head in the first weekend of September 1792, when the sans-culottes run amok through Paris and kill about 1,000 prisoners in about 20 hours. These are mostly former aristocrats and some clergy who they accuse of being traitors to the revolution. And I think for me, this is where the terror starts. Even though it calms down in the next few months, this is a sign that, really as Danton said, that terror needs to be taken out of the hands of the people. And kind of what you see in 1793 are the Jacobins restoring order to the terror. And the reason it comes down in the later autumn of 1792 rather, is because there are a couple of important French victories in the war. Firstly, on the 20th of September, the Battle of Valmy is won. There's widespread relief from the French, and it also leads to the Prussians withdrawing. And so the French armies are able to focus on the Austrians. On the 6th of November, they win the Battle of Jemappes, or Jemappes or something, and that forces the Austrians back and really opens up the Austrian Netherlands, or what we would call Belgium, to the French Republican armies. And in fact, they go in and push the Austrians right back and occupy what we would think of as Belgium. This is under General Dumouriez. And for a time things look quite sweet, but they try to bring the same sort of revolutionary regime to the Austrian Netherlands, and actually that starts to turn the local population against them, and so they're not as popular by the end as they were at the start. Secondly, things go wrong because they execute Louis XVI in January 1793, and this unites the European nations against France once again. So what this means is that in February 1793, again seizing the initiative, the French declare war on Britain and on the Dutch Republic, and the Austrians try again to force Dumouriez out of the Austrian Netherlands. By this point, a lot of his army had gone home. He was unable to raise local troops to fight for him, and he's forced out of the Austrian Netherlands. Actually, there's quite a lot of credibility in the suggestion that the Austrians let him go, thinking that he will go back to Paris and undo the revolution. Dumouriez does in fact try to foment a bit of revolution in his army, but he's unable to do that, and it's at that point that he defects. And Dumouriez, remember, is a Girondin supporter, and his defection really starts to undermine the credibility of the Girondins. Something else that's undermining them at this point is our good old friend, the economy. The harvests had not been good. And the new taxation laws on property were less effective than the taxation laws under the old regime, the Ancien regime. And thirdly, war was very expensive, and that was kind of okay when they were occupying land abroad because they were able to plunder it and bring in loot. But as they came back into France, all that profit disappeared, and the Republic was under pressure once more. This led to inflation as they printed more money. So, for instance, soap, which had cost 12 sous, like pennies, in 1790, now costs 28 sous. Sous is spelled S-O-U-S. Sugar, unrefined sugar, cost 12 sous a pound in 1790, and now it was up to above 36, so it trebled in price. There were riots in response to this, and the French government was forced to subsidise for bread to the order of 500,000 francs a day in the spring of 1793. So the economy was bad, the war was going bad, and in March 1793 things kick off in the Vendée. The Vendéans were sceptical about the revolution to start with. They're pretty monarchists. They were also extremely Catholic, and when people came around and said, you've got to fight for this republic that you never believed in to start with, that has undermined your religion, they rebelled across the whole Vendée. That is like the triple blow, and so in March 1793 there's the first wave of terror legislation. So this is the law of the 19th March, which was very much targeted against the Vendéans, and said that if you imposed martial law on the Vendée, and said that if you are caught bearing arms, weapons, or wearing monarchist cockades or insignia, then you would be subject to martial law. And that meant basically if you were found guilty, you could be shot within 24 hours. It also led to representatives on mission being sent out. So the convention sent 2 representatives out to each département around France to make sure that Republican law was being followed. They set up watch committees to look out for suspicious foreigners and traitors within each department, and the Committee of Public Safety was set up. This took over running the country. It's kind of like the cabinet at this time, and it takes on executive powers. In March 1793, and as this legislation is produced, it's not under Robespierre, it's under the leadership of Danton, who says, revolution is the order of the day, and that we need these measures in order to get a grip on the country. Does it work? Well, kind of. The Girondins, so Danton's there representing the Commune, but the Girondins are still in power as the government, and they're the majority in the convention, and they're the majority in the CPS, in the Committee of Public Safety. And they try and wrest back some of the initiative by two things that they do and don't do. Firstly, they resist pressure to set a maximum price on bread. Now, their theory is that if they set a maximum price on bread, then everyone will charge that maximum, and what you'll actually get is higher bread prices. They were probably right about this, but to the sans-culottes on the street, it was of course reported and thought that what they were doing was allowing the price to keep rising without being checked. So their economic policy is misunderstood, really, and not sympathised with, and doesn't really work. Certainly doesn't work for them in terms of popularity. The second problem for them is that to try and deal with some of this popular attacks against them, they have Marat arrested and put on trial, but they lose that trial. They are unable to prove that he's a counter-revolutionary or that he's causing them trouble, and Marat is released. And this coupled with the fact that the war is turning and the economic woes, means that the sans-culottes turn decisively against the Girondins, and in June there is a purge of the Girondins, not killed at this stage, they're just removed from the convention. Some of them are arrested, and the Jacobins take over. Now, one of the things that allows the terror to happen is this rise of the Jacobins, because the Jacobins are more radical politicians than the Girondins, and they are more able to justify in themselves and to other people the move towards violence. The other sort of final things that fall into place that confirm the necessity in their mind for the terror were a Federalist revolt. Now, this actually kind of starts in May, but it gathers pace with the purge of the Girondins. The Federalist revolt happens in Normandy, and also in the southwest in Bordeaux, and around Marseille and Toulon and Lyon in the south, kind of east and sweeping around. And basically in places far away from Paris. And they tend to be places that sympathise more with the Girondins, certainly more with the Girondins than the Jacobins. What they are doing, the Federalists, it's very important to remember that the Vendéans, the Vendée revolt, is against the revolution. Essentially, they are counter-revolutionaries. The Federalists are pro-revolution, but they want more of a say in how it's run. They don't like Paris, and in particular, they don't like the Paris Jacobins dictating to people in the outer parts of France how the French Republic should operate. And they want a more federal system to be installed in France. So that's one thing. The Jacobins very much see them as undermining their credibility and authority, and they act against them in the terror. The second thing that happens, and really I think the final straw, is that on the 13th of July, Charlotte Corday turned up at Jean-Paul Marat's house and stabbed him in the bath. Marat was in the bath because he had a skin disease, and he was covered up and stuff, but he was soaking in the bath. And she managed to get in. She says she has some names for him, of people who were counter-revolutionary, and she stabs him and kills him. She doesn't really try and escape. She believes that what she's doing is ending the threat of the terror which Marat had been proposing. She thought that by removing the mouthpiece, she would remove the escalating terror. And in fact, of course, what she does is provide not only the rationale for terror, but also the fear for the terror. The Jacobins, this is a woman who's come out of nowhere. She's not organised. She's not part of some big conspiracy. She's just a woman who has got on the train. She hasn't got on a train at all. There's no trains invented. She's got in a carriage. She's gone to Paris. She's bought a knife in the Palais Royal markets, and she's gone and stabbed him. Now, there's nothing more terrifying for the Jacobins than thinking any one of these people could be against me and out to get me, and that paranoia seeps into their soul. And so what I think you have by the summer of 1793, you really do have a situation where the Jacobins feel like it's them or us. We have to act against the counter-revolutionaries, or the revolution will be undone. And whether that's because of foreign infiltration, the Vendéans, the Federalists trying to steal the revolution away from them, or individuals who just don't like what they're doing. So I hope that clarifies why the terror started. And next time we'll look at how it progresses and what ends the terror in 1794. Thanks for listening. See you next time.